Welcome everyone to NoDQ&A Video, the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. My name is Aaron Rift. I am the owner of NoDQ.com. I've been doing NoDQ&A video for well over a decade now. I've been doing the text Q&A as well as the videos, the live streams. I've been discussing wrestling for a very long time. NoDQ has been in operations for almost 30 years now. Crazy to think. Anyways, we've had a lot of wrestling history over the years. We have a lot going on right now. We are heading into the fall of 2025. Let's get to some questions. Feel free to super chat a question if you are watching live. The super chats will take priority. If you send one, I will get right to it. It's much appreciated. It helps out the channel. And of course, please spread the word and tell a friend. Now, I have email questions that were sent to me. I will get to those right now. First one comes from JJ Williams, the Renegade of Wrestling, longtime NoDQ contributor. Shout out to JJ, who is in the chat room tonight. JJ brought up AJ Lee, and actually quite a few people did. JJ says, with AJ Lee now officially back, and having signed a multi-year deal, who are your top three opponents you would like to see her face, not counting Becky, since that's obviously on the horizon? There's so many people I would like to see her have a match with. I think of Roxanne Perez as a top pick because Roxanne was very much influenced by AJ Lee and is close with CM Punk and AJ Lee for that matter. I think that they would have a great match. Even though AJ's a babyface, at some point, AJ Lee versus Rhea Ripley would be fun to watch. AJ Lee versus Charlotte Flair, another of the four horsewomen. Io Sky would be a fun one. There's a lot of options for AJ Lee on the WWE main roster, and even people coming in from NXT. Somebody like Sol Ruka might be a fun match. It's great because AJ left just as all these people from NXT were coming in. Even AJ Lee versus Bayley would be a fun match, one that we didn't really get a chance to see because AJ left just as Bayley was becoming a name in NXT. And JJ also says, can you plug Walter's channel? He's talking about Walter Cruz, longtime NoDQ contributor. So I will go ahead and give him that quick plug. There you go. Follow him at Rage of Wrestling. Walter Cruz is only 21 subscribers away from his goal. Make sure you do that. Thank you again, JJ. Steve-O sent in an email question. Thank you, Steve-O. Steve-O says, what a return this past Friday for AJ Lee. Come to think of it, this might be one of the most hyped returns ever for a female star in WWE. Offhand, the only thing closer to build up hype was Ronda Rousey coming from UFC. Anyway, are there any past women's returns you would equate to AJ's? Are there any that you could see being just as huge in the future? That's a great question. When Ronda Rousey returned in 2022, it was fine. It was what it was. But I feel like even by that point, she did all she could really do in WWE. I think that her coming back was just rehashing a lot of what we already saw from her and not much evolution, so to speak, to her character. That is a tough question as far as past names. I don't really feel that there has ever been a return that made quite the difference. Maybe Becky Lynch in 2021, when she came back after having her baby. She was gone during COVID, had her child, and then came back at SummerSlam. That was a big moment. Maybe that was the biggest one before AJ, but I feel like AJ eclipsed that. And to me, AJ is the biggest return ever of a female superstar. Now, are there other ones that could be at that level? Yes. Paige, I think, would be a big deal under the right circumstances. Ideally, I'd like to see her return in the United Kingdom. I think she would get the biggest reaction there. Sasha Banks, whenever that happens, I think that will be huge. I do believe we will see Sasha back one day. AJ returned. People return. It happens. I do think Sasha Banks will be back eventually, and hers will be very significant because she was one of WWE's top stars for many years. And beyond that, maybe Toni Storm. Actually, Toni Storm, even though she didn't really have much of a run in WWE, think of Cody Rhodes. I think Cody had a better run in WWE the first time than Toni did in her first time. But the general idea that Cody made a name for himself outside of WWE and then came back basically as his post-WWE character, Toni Storm coming back as Timeless Toni Storm in WWE, I think that would get a huge reaction. All right, here's one from Michael. Thank you, Michael, for the $2 super chat. Like I said, the super chats get priority. Shout out to Michael. Michael says Britt Baker's return. We're talking about AEW. AEW isn't exactly known for making the most out of returns. See Wardlow, for example. This last return, he's already not on TV. Britt Baker did return, and it was all right, but there wasn't much of a follow-up. And if she returns again, each return will mean a little bit less than the previous one. Britt Baker going to WWE, though, it's not a return, although I think she might have done a few dark matches or enhancement talent matches. If Britt came to WWE, I think she would get a good return pop from the fans. Return in the sense of her coming back to TV, but not necessarily to WWE. Beyond that, I don't know which women on the shelf right now could come back and really get a great reaction in AEW. WWE, I mentioned a few names. And Michael sent in $2. Thank you, Michael. Says, I mean, to WWE, she was in WWE first. Yeah, but Britt basically was enhancement talent. She didn't really do anything in WWE her first go around. And I think a lot of people out there might not even remember her being in WWE, period. But yes, because she has the AEW name, she goes to WWE. I think she would get a pretty big reaction. Thank you for that, Michael. Much appreciated. All right, this question comes from Calvin Bowman. This is an email question. Feel free to super chat questions too. They are much appreciated. Calvin says, what is your favorite match from Bad Blood 1997? I mean, Calvin, that was a one-match show. It was Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, first Hell in a Cell. Literally, that show has no competition. That match has no competition. There was one great all-time classic match, and then the rest of the card was very forgettable. I think Bret Hart was in a tag match against the Patriot and Vader, Bret and the Bulldog, something like that. That match was okay, but come on. Yeah, asking me my favorite match from that is like asking what's my favorite match from WrestleMania 13. We know the answer to that one. Or what's my favorite match from WrestleMania 25? One match show. That was very much a one-match pay-per-view. All right, we got one here from Dwayne. Dwayne sent in this email. Do you think that they could make the mixed tag match for both titles at Wrestlepalooza? Dwayne talking about Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch going up against CM Punk and AJ Lee, with Rollins and Becky putting up their titles. Well, first of all, why would they? They would have to get something in return, right? Would it be a stipulation where Punk and AJ would have to leave if they lost? I don't think they will. I don't think the titles need to be on the line. I think the idea of a personal grudge mixed tag team match, that's the selling point. You really don't need the titles on the line. You could do the match and then you can keep those feuds going and do those singles matches later. Why waste the titles on the line in a tag match? I'm generally not a fan of tag team matches where a singles title is on the line. I've never liked them. I didn't like them when WCW did it. I think Kevin Nash teamed up with somebody against Randy Savage and Sid. I think it was Sting. They did a tag match and Savage won the title in a tag match. I'm just not digging that. I think it's best to just let them do the mixed tag and then they can do the singles matches afterwards. I think that makes a lot more sense. And as Steve-O says, it's too much to have both on the line. You don't need to overcomplicate things. All right, we got an email here from Matthew. Matthew's in the chat room, often in the NoDQ discussions over on NoDQ.com. If you go to the comments section, Matthew's often there. You can leave your thoughts on any news post. Feel free to interact with other fans over at NoDQ.com, bottom of every post. Got that out of the way. Matthew says this is a two-part question and says, now that TKO has shown they can make Tony Khan move the time of All Out, what is to stop them from doing this going forward for all AEW pay-per-views? And he also wants to know, when will Tony Khan finally grow a set of balls and fight back? And then Uthman sent in an email, similar question. Should this be the last time Tony Khan is a nice guy and move the start time of his pay-per-view? Nice guy in quotes. Oof thinks the next time Tony shouldn't blink and keep the times of his show the same. What say you? All right. So first part of it, what is stopping WWE? Absolutely nothing. And now that AEW is shown that they will move the time of their shows, WWE might actually move the time of their show at some point. And I could see WWE continuing to do this, putting premium live events up against AEW just because they know they could screw with them and get in their heads. I would say Tony Khan probably should take a stand at some point. And I hate to say this because I prefer not having to try and watch both shows at the same time. I would love it if we get this moving forward. Who would have thought, of all these years of me complaining about these AEW shows going past midnight, they're too long, it took WWE going against them to get Tony to finally start moving these shows to an earlier start time. If anything, AEW should stick it to WWE one of these times and put a free pay-per-view against one of their premium live events and take the financial hit. Tony Khan's a billionaire. He can afford it. I do think at some point he needs to fight back because it makes them look weak when they don't stand up to WWE. But on the other side, doing the earlier start times, it's better for AEW in a way because, as I've mentioned, I'm exhausted by midnight. I don't want to be even watching the show at 11 o'clock. Then I have to do a stream afterwards. But if I wasn't, I'd still be tired and burned out. It's easier to watch the longer shows earlier in the day. And AEW gets the jump on WWE. So when they do the afternoon show, if fans are trying to watch both, they've already seen 4 or 5 hours of AEW, and they're going to have that fatigue. They're going to be tired from too much wrestling. If anything, I think AEW should just say, you know what, moving forward, all of our shows are going to be in the afternoon. I would be all for that. And if WWE moves their shows to the afternoon, then stick to your guns and just go head to head. I say that's what they should do at this point. That's what I think is the best way to go moving forward. And yes, WWE will probably screw with them no matter what. All right. Shout out to Michael, who is sending super chats tonight. Thank you, Michael, for the super chat. I appreciate it. What or who could be the women's War Games match. You know WWE is going to do the 2 War Games matches, which I'm not the biggest fan of. This would be an example of where I think WWE should have Survivor Series be a 2-night show. Or if anything, don't do War Games at Survivor Series and just do 1 War Games match when a feud calls for it. It has boosted Survivor Series a little bit, but I do miss the classic matches. Anyways, that's not the question here. Women's War Games. Right now, I feel like it would be something related to the Kabuki Warriors going up against Io Sky. I just feel like there are alliances forming in this storyline. You got Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, they're on good terms. Then you got the Kabuki Warriors. You could have Judgment Day getting involved, Roxanne and Raquel. I just feel like there's more substance on Raw with the different factions and whatnot. On SmackDown, I mean, you got Tiffany Stratton and Jade Cargill. You got the Secret Hervis, but I feel like there's more depth with Raw. So if I was going to do a women's War Games match for this year, I would do Team Kabuki Warriors against Team Io and Ripley and give them a couple extra partners, and boom, there you go. You got your women's War Games match. But moving forward, I really think that WWE should just not have War Games at Survivor Series and book the matches when you have a good storyline reason to do so. Thank you again, Michael. Very much appreciated. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, will you purchase AEW pay-per-views through HBO Max? The answer to your question is yes, because I have HBO Max. I'd like to save the $10. I'd rather not spend $50 if I can help it. It's not the best discount, and we will get to that, actually, because there was an email question, which we'll get to here momentarily. You know what? We'll get to it real quick, and then we'll get to the next super chat. But yes, I will be buying them through HBO Max. Oofman had sent that other question in, but Steve-O sent in this one about the HBO Max. Steve-O says, in his opinion, it's very disappointing that there's only going to be a $10 discount. If you look at it, for those of you that don't have HBO Max, it could actually cost you more to watch the pay-per-views because you need the Max subscription and pay $40 extra. WWE PLEs don't look as pricey now. Do you think this move will help AEW at all? If not, what would you suggest? I don't think it's ideal to create new fans this way. We really needed more of a discount, but they're trying to make as much out of this as possible. Obviously, the pay-per-views are lucrative for AEW. They have a core fan base. They get 150,000 to 200,000 people that buy every pay-per-view, and that's a significant number for AEW. They have a very consistent fan base, and they've earned it because they've put on great pay-per-view after great pay-per-view. But there's really no good reason to buy the pay-per-view on HBO Max unless you already have HBO Max. I think what they should have done was either given a little bit of a bigger discount, or the first one should have been free. Say, screw it, we're going to take the hit for this one. WWE wants to screw with us. We're going to make All Out free on HBO Max. And then maybe HBO would get some more subscribers out of that. And they would be happy, and maybe that would hurt WWE. This is WWE's big ESPN debut. If anybody could pull it off, it would be Tony Khan. He's got the funds to do it. Take the hit for one show. That's what I would have done if I'm a billionaire and I want to stick it to WWE and get back at them for pulling this stunt. I would have done that. And maybe they could have gone a little bit cheaper with the pay-per-views, maybe $30 with the HBO subscription. Might have been more appealing to some fans. Great question, though. Thank you for that, Steve-O, and thank you, Psycho, for the super chat. Now, JJ Williams sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, JJ. Much appreciated. JJ says, what would it take for you to cover live impacts? Well, if they go on a streaming service, and I believe they did do a show on YouTube this week, but wasn't enough for me to tune in. If they officially move to a significant network or streaming service and their first show is loaded, I'd probably give them a shot and at least cover the first show and see what happens. Impact is a solid product. I did go to Bound for Glory last year and I enjoyed it, but I don't think that they really offer enough to truly stand out. They're basically a fourth WWE brand at this point. Like, why watch TNA when you got NXT? TNA just feels like NXT with a little bit less star power and more former WWE stars. Impact, unfortunately, it lost its identity a long time ago, back to when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff were there. And at least the quality of the shows improved, but it just doesn't stand out enough for me to want to watch it. Like, if I'm going to watch wrestling, I'm going to cover the top league first and then work my way down. And if I feel like watching wrestling after all that, then, I'll give something like Impact a try. But right now, there's not much. You would need to have a really interesting storyline or character. I will say this. There was a brief period like in 2016 that I actually checked out Impact a little bit because of the Broken Matt storyline. I thought, as crazy as it was interesting. It was different. And I did tune in. I watched their deletion match. And I was like, this is the wackiest thing I've ever seen. But it stood out. It was different. So that's what Impact needs. They need something to make themselves different from everybody else. And they need a hot storyline or a hot character. Joe Hendry's not the answer. They need something else. And until they get it, it's going to be a hard sell for me when I'm already watching 5, 6, 7 hours of wrestling every week as it is. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Much love to you, Psycho. Thank you as always for super chatting and participating. Psycho Jet Black says, do you feel that both WWE and AEW are not pushing the younger stars harder because they still have plenty of older popular wrestlers that can still go? Absolutely. AJ Lee is a brand, and there is money to be made with that brand. If WWE can make money with an older brand, they're going to capitalize on that. I mean, WWE is a money-making machine. They know how to make money. And look at those T-shirt sales for AJ Lee. They have been on fire. They're selling thousands and thousands of pieces of merchandise from AJ Lee. And they got plenty of younger wrestlers. People are saying, well, WWE's just relying on the old guys. But to me, it's very different than WCW. WWE knows how to make money out of their older talent, and they're still pushing towards the future. You look at NXT, you got Obafemi, you got Sol Ruka, and you got guys on the main roster like Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. WWE is absolutely pushing younger talent and getting them ready for the time when they're going to need to step up and be the top guys. But for now, WWE has a lot of talent that they can rely on and people that are still very hot. And yeah, things have changed. In 1996, 40 years old was considered over the hill for men, and for women, like 30 was over the hill, and things have changed. AJ Lee's pushing 40 and she's back now. And you got wrestlers that are up in their late 40s that are still being pushed. It's just a different era. And I think that if wrestlers take some time off and they're not overstaying their welcome, they can come back after a while. And even if they're older, they can still add something to the brand. The problem with a lot of those WCW guys, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, they got stale. Yet they were not taken off television unless Hogan walked out or Scott Hall got in trouble. These guys didn't voluntarily step away for a while and let the young talent shine, and then they could have come back down the line and meant something. You know, they didn't have that approach, and it just really hurt WCW at the absolute worst time because WWE was red hot, plus WCW's TV shows were a complete mess. But thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Building Nexus. Much appreciated. The question is, what are the chances Seth Rollins main events WrestleMania inside Hell in a Cell? I like that idea. I don't know if WWE is going to do it, but what's it been now? About a year since we've had a Hell in a Cell match? I mean, I suppose they could do it sooner. Their attitude might be WrestleMania doesn't need a Hell in a Cell. We have seen Hell in a Cell before. We had Balor in one a few years ago with Edge. And then before that, we had Shane McMahon and The Undertaker, and then Big Boss Man versus Undertaker. We'll forget about that one. But yes, I like that idea, especially if it's Seth Rollins versus CM Punk or Roman Reigns one-on-one at WrestleMania. What better way to end the feud once and for all? And when is a Hell in a Cell match actually closed WrestleMania? I cannot recall it ever happening. Shane and Undertaker was not the last match, so I don't think it's ever happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. Even End of an Era was not the closing match of WrestleMania 28. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Will they do it? Who knows what they're thinking. I mean, I don't know when the CM Punk feud is wrapping up and when they're going to revisit the Roman Reigns feud, but maybe they'll not do that because we got War Games coming up. I think it just depends on, what the timeline is for everything, when they're doing the last Punk match, when they're doing the Seth Rollins Roman Reigns match, when they're going to blow off that feud. And, it just depends on timing. But if they could get to WrestleMania and that's a possibility, I love it. I think they should do it. Thank you for that. We got one here from Ian. Ian sent in one, even though Ian's been busy. Ian threw in an email question. With TKO in charge of WWE and TKO's history of appealing to far right-wing stuff, does WWE appeal to that demo and not everyone else? I think WWE appeals to everybody. I really don't think that you're going to find one specific group of people at a WWE event. Just because the guys in charge feel a certain way doesn't mean that everybody feels that way. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the talent probably lean the other way. So I think WWE tries for the most part to not get political. They have the stuff with Donald Trump, but you know what? I get that. If Triple H is in the White House with Donald Trump, WWE is going to tout that. That's a huge deal. Like a wrestler with the president of the United States, like that's unheard of. Something like that never happened. So I get them doing that, but beyond that, they really don't get political with their storylines. They'll have wrestlers rip into sports teams, but very rarely will you see them talking about a politician in the city. Once in a while, but it almost never happens. And I think for the most part, WWE tends to shy away from that stuff. And I think they try to appeal to as many people as possible. Thank you for that, Ian. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Much appreciated. Psycho says, some fans won't like this, but do you see an AJ Lee versus Nikki Bella match since AJ cut that shoot promo on the Divas era and Nikki was the face? The only thing about that is with AJ back, I think people want to see AJ against fresh opponents. If AJ's around for the long haul and Nikki's around for the long haul and the opportunity presents itself, maybe they could just do it as a one-off on Raw or something. Sure, why not? But I think the focus will be AJ versus new opponents, the new generation of women's wrestlers, the people we haven't seen or faced before. I think that will be WWE's focus moving forward. I would not rule that match out as a possibility, though, down the line if both women are around on a regular basis. All right, let's move on here. We got some more email questions. Jeremiah Dorset sent in an email. Thank you, Jeremy. Says, hey, Aaron, what are the challenges AEW faces in 2026? Do you think AEW fans and wrestlers will turn on Tony Khan in the long term if he doesn't change up the quality and in-ring presentation of the product as a whole? Tony Khan has a very loyal fan base. The sickos. They love AEW as it is, which, let's face it, AEW is a televised, glorified, independent wrestling promotion. It's like PWG. You tune into Dynamite, you're basically watching PWG. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, that's the promotion that was a hot company, even though they ran in a small building in Reseda, California. They were the talk of the independent wrestling world. And I went to a lot of PWG shows, and they were awesome. I saw El Generico, Kevin Steen. I saw the Young Bucks. I saw a lot of these guys that are at the top of their game right now. And they were having incredible matches, and PWG was awesome. But it's one thing to be there live and watch these great athletic matches. It's another thing to watch on TV. On TV, I think you need more. As a television viewer, you want stories and drama and the soap opera elements. You want a reason to tune in for the next week. The problem with the independent wrestling is that they don't really do storylines. You go to an independent show and people just go to watch wrestling matches. And that's great. It's fun to watch wrestling matches live, especially when they're high quality. But if you're watching on TV, I think it's a different beast. And the problem with AEW is you watch the shows and it feels very indie, like these 8-man all-star matches. Like that's an independent gimmick. Like that's straight out of the indies. And then that's what AEW has been doing as of late. And to me, it just doesn't appeal to a wide audience. It's very niche. But to answer your question, I don't think any more people are going to turn on AEW than they already have. AEW has their loyal fan base, and I think Tony Khan will continue to do what he's doing because he's the boss. He's got the money, and he likes to please the sickos. And that's it. That's what he does. Will it change? I don't know. But as long as they have their TV deal, I think it's unlikely. All right, here we go. Mr. Tito, longtime No DQ columnist. Mr. Tito says, should bra and panty matches be brought back? I say they should do it once. They should, just for the hell of it, do a bra and panties match just to piss off people, because you'd hear the outrage. You'd see everybody get angry and upset. But if there was a storyline that called for it, it might be fun to just bring it back one time. I mean, men did the tuxedo match back in the day. If they could find an interesting opportunity to do a match like that, like what about Kiana James? Because she's the businesswoman and they had her with somebody, and somehow you could get to that point. If there's an organic way to do it, I think it'd be fun to do it as a one-off. Like, obviously, they wouldn't be doing it on a regular basis. It would just be a little fun one-time thing. Sure, why not? Bring it back one time just to get everybody outraged. It would be entertaining. Ian said, what about Lola Vice? Yeah, you could do like Lola Vice versus Kiana James or something like that. JJ said, what about Lola Vice versus Jada Parker? There you go. Do it in NXT. Even better. Maybe get the ratings up. Maybe Tony Khan could do one. Hey, that might actually get more people to turn against Tony Khan if he did that, because, you know, the wrestling fans want their wrestling. They're very serious about their wrestling. They don't want this bra and panties garbage or anything that's not guys going out there and doing their acrobatics. That's what the sickos want. They want their real professional wrestling. They don't want any of that BS. All right, let's get back to the email questions. Thank you for that, Jeremy. This one comes from Matt from Sweden. Thank you, Matt. Matt says, what did you think about the Sting and Macho Man segments from 1997, early 97, and why didn't they do anything with them as a team against the NWO? Have a great weekend. So in early 97, Randy Savage came back after losing to Hulk Hogan. He was gone for like 3 months, and the rumors were that WWE was going to sign him. Savage was going to leave WCW, but Savage ended up staying. Then Sting came down from the rafters, confronted Savage, recruited Savage. Then they were together for a while, and then Savage just joined the NWO, which felt very random. Now, I did enjoy Savage in the NWO, but again, after everything he went through, it was weird for him to team up with Hogan. And Eric Bischoff would probably be able to answer that question better than I could. I really don't know why they dropped that, other than they thought Sting was better off as a lone wolf, and maybe they figured, okay, Sting with allies is weird. He's better off being by himself. And it was probably the right call. I mean, the real ball was dropped at Starrcade when they did the fast count with Sting and Hulk Hogan. Beyond that, the thing with Savage, it wasn't a big deal. Savage was fun in the NWO. And if Savage never turned heel, we wouldn't have gotten all those great DDP versus Randy Savage matches that put DDP's career on the map. Let's face it. I mean, that's what really took DDP to the next level, were those matches with Savage. So I'm fine that Savage left Sting and went back as a bad guy and joined the NWO. Interesting question there. All right. We got one here from Psycho Jet Black. Psycho sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Psycho says, what were your thoughts on WrestleMania 38, the last Vince booked WrestleMania? I thought it was pretty good. I know people were very mixed about Vince, especially towards the end, and rightfully so. But I think for the most part, really since the Peacock era started and we got back to fans in the arenas, I think WWE pay-per-views have been consistently good. There were only a few stinkers, in my opinion. WrestleMania 38 was a huge spectacle. And to me, they were really trying to make up for the previous WrestleMania being not an empty crowd, but they had the social distancing, and it was like 25,000 people in the stadium. This was a big deal. WrestleMania 38, Dallas, Texas, packed stadium. I enjoyed it. Cody returning was huge. Love that match with Seth Rollins. And I enjoyed Pat McAfee's stuff with Austin Theory. The Vince thing was what it was. But there were some fun moments in that WrestleMania, and I did enjoy it overall. Now, Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Tito. I appreciate it. It says, how much did you enjoy your hot lesbian action in WWE? Well, I enjoyed 3-Minute Warning beating the hell out of them. That was fun. Even though it's man-on-woman violence, so really it's not fun. But I enjoyed 3-Minute Warning. I mean, that's really what I remember out of that segment. Wait a minute. Did I just say 3 minutes? That was entertaining, even though the act never really had much of a shelf life. Seemed like it fizzled pretty quickly. But yeah, I enjoyed what came out of hot lesbian action, and that was 3-Minute Warning from Eric Bischoff. That was fun. Thank you for that, Mr. Tito. And of course, Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler doing their stuff was fun. It had its moments for the time. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho says, seriously, why did Triple H drag out the Austin Theory and Grayson Waller storyline? Did he really dislike Theory since he was a Vince McMahon guy? Again, I think that's a question that Triple H could answer better than I would, but he's probably not going to answer it because whenever he does do a press conference or an interview, he's going to get the questions that he wants to answer. And I don't think he wants to answer that one. I mean, we may find out one day. Austin Theory leaves WWE. Maybe he'll tell us the story of what really happened. I don't know if Triple H dislikes Austin Theory. I just think that booking all these guys and making promises to them and saying you're gonna take them to the top, it's easier said than done because there's only so many spots. And I hate to say it, Austin Theory, I think he's a good wrestler, but to me, he didn't really stand out that much. And I think that he got his push and he just didn't connect with the audience. And I don't think that's on Vince McMahon or Triple H or WWE management. I just don't think Austin Theory really had what it took to fully capitalize on the opportunity he was given. He's a great talent, but promo-wise, like, he couldn't hang with John Cena. Let's be real here. And that was when Triple H was in charge. They did John Cena versus Austin Theory. But yeah, the Grayson Waller storyline, I think a Theory face turn might have been able to turn his career around, and why WWE didn't capitalize on it when it was getting a little hot, had a little semblance of momentum. Why they didn't capitalize on that? That's a great question. Who knows? Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Mr. Tito is enjoying these questions. How much did you enjoy Steve Austin beating up Lita? I just hated that whole storyline because that was how desperate WWE was to try and get Steve Austin heat. Like, they were fighting it so bad. The crowds wanted to cheer Austin. They turned him, and they got him out there. He has to beat up JR to try and get heat. That doesn't work. So then they have him trying to beat up Lita. That doesn't work. And they tried having him be a coward, and he's kissing up to Vince. They had him singing, and none of it worked. So I didn't really enjoy it. It was just mind-boggling how they took a great character and they flushed it down the toilet with all that booking and trying to make Austin something that he wasn't. He was Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they completely changed the character around to try and make the heel turn work. And yeah, did not go over too well. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $2 super chat. Building Nexus says, what if Cody Rhodes returned to WWE with a Def Rebel song? This might get some people upset, but I don't know if Cody would have reached the level he did. There are some people that will try to downplay the importance of presentation and music. I think music can make a career, and I think music can break a career. Entrance, presentation, it's all part of the overall package. Cody Rhodes got over on his own. He had that music. The music worked for him, and WWE let him keep it, and look how far he's gone with it. Maybe Def Rebel would have lucked into a banger theme. I mean, we've had a few good ones like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. Yeah, maybe they would have come up with a good one. But I feel like it would have sounded like DIY's theme song. You know, you had Gargano and Ciampa with cool music when CFOs were running the show, and then Def Rebel took over and listened to the DIY song. Yeah, it would have been goofy and unlikely to have helped Cody much. You know, he might have still done well, but I don't know if he would have gone to the level he did. That's the thing about entrance music. It can really really elevate you, or it could also drag you down. Look at the Street Profits when they had the music change. Just saying. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. Thank you to everybody that has super chatted. I got a few more email questions here, and we still got some time, so feel free to super chat if you haven't yet. All right, this one comes from Michael. This was an email. Why does it seem that only in sports entertainment that it's a prerequisite to talk smack about your former employer? If us regular folk did that and a future potential employer heard, we probably would not get that job. Well, I think that in wrestling, it's all about the size of the balls. Do you have the grapefruits? Do you have the ruthless aggression? And sometimes if you're outspoken and you're not afraid to stand up and take a stand, then that can help you in wrestling, kayfabe wise and in real life. Vince McMahon liked when people would defy him and stand up to him. Vince likes that kind of stuff. And I think that in wrestling in general, people see it as machismo. They see it as alpha male stuff, whatever. But yeah, talking smack, that's what wrestling's all about. And you go and leave the company and you talk smack, and some might say it's burning a bridge, but others might see it a different way and see it as that's just how wrestling is. When people leave WWE, they talk a lot of crap, and they're not necessarily burning a bridge. They're just talking smack, and that's what sells. That's what gets people listening to the podcast and get some of these wrestlers booked when they talk bad about WWE. It's just the name of the game. And I don't think people in WWE and most people in wrestling take it personally, because they know that's just how the business operates. It's very unique in that way. All right, Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. How much do you want to grate cheese on AJ's abs? Well, AJ Styles has very nice abs, I will say. Even though he's pushing 50, he has phenomenal abs. But I think I'm going to stay away from that one. I met AJ Styles before. He's jacked. And I don't want to mess with him. AJ Styles would kick my ass. So, no, I don't want to grate any cheese on AJ Styles' abs. But thank you for the super chat, Mr. Tito. All right. We got another email question here from Gino. Gino says, are international crowds so much better than U.S. crowds that WWE should explore less events in the U.S. and more internationally? 100%. And this actually ties into another email from Jeremy. Jeremy wants to know where future WrestleMania should be held. And he brought up Miami. He brought up Detroit, Indianapolis, Seattle, Toronto, etc. And then he mentioned international countries like Japan, Mexico. He thinks it would help the international audience if WrestleMania was outside the U.S. and overseas. Okay, so first part of this from Gino, yes. I think WWE should try to do as many international shows as possible. Could it be an issue where after a while the European fans might get burned out? Yes, that's the risk you take, but absence makes the heart grow fonder, whatever the saying is. If there are fewer shows in the U.S., maybe the fans would be more louder and passionate for those shows when they get them. The international shows add such a fun vibe that most of the U.S. shows lack. So yes, I would like more international shows. And as far as WrestleMania locations go, I don't want to see any in the U.S. I have no desire to see more WrestleManias in the United States. They could do Vancouver. Vancouver deserves it. That guy always brings the sign to the events, and it never happens. Vancouver's a good city. I like Vancouver. But I just want WrestleMania to be in London. London would be my pick. London is long overdue for WrestleMania. Wembley Stadium, by far, that's where I want to see WrestleMania by a long shot. London, and maybe they could return to that Paris venue again. That was a lot of fun. That's 30,000 plus people. I'd like to see WrestleMania at the Tokyo Dome. That would be crazy. WrestleMania in South America might be really fun. But yeah, first and foremost, we need WrestleMania in London. 100%. That would be my number one pick. And it's not even close. And Gino sent in this email. Gino says, if you could get rid of one championship in WWE, which would it be? I would get rid of the Speed title. I mean, I don't even see the point in it. But really, I hate to say it, I don't think we need those U.S. titles. I'd like to see those merged with the Intercontinental titles and just let the Intercontinental title be on both shows. Bam. End of that. And I don't think we need two world champions either. I would say one world champion, one mid-card champion, one tag team champion for the men, and then the same set for the women. And that's that. And let the champions appear on both shows. I've been arguing that for the longest time. So get rid of all the other ones. All right, we got one here from Psycho Jet Black. Psycho sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you very much for that, Psycho. Much appreciated. Psycho says, which one male and one female wrestler from WWE and AEW, I guess name one male and female that will win their first world championship in the next 5 years? Okay. WWE, I will say, and we're not talking about NXT, we're talking about main roster. Braun Breaker would be the male for me. I think he'll be a world champion, especially the world heavyweight title. Maybe less likely for the WWE title, but I think he'll win one of those. And then I think Sol Ruca will get one at some point. Now, here's the thing, though. Are we counting the Divas title as the world championship? So if we're not, I'll say AJ Lee. But if we are including it, then I'll go with Sol Ruca. And as far as AEW goes, I'll say Kyle Fletcher. They're really high on him. They did that angle where he beat up Kenny Omega and he beat up Hangman Adam Page. He had that feud with Will Ospreay. They're really high on the guy. So I'm thinking next 5 years, Kyle Fletcher will be the AEW World Champion. And as far as the women go, that's a harder one to answer. But I'll go on a limb and say Willow Nightingale. She seems to be on the rise in AEW. And 5 years from now, who knows where she'll be. Maybe she'll end up in WWE and she won't even stay in AEW. But she's in AEW now for a while. So yeah, I'll say Willow Nightingale. Thank you for that, Psycho. That was an interesting question. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Building Nexus says, has a theme song ever killed a career? If so, who? That's an interesting question because I was talking about the theme songs earlier. I'm not going to say kill the career, but look what happened with the Street Profits. I'd really have to think about this. Nakamura might be towards the top of the list. Like, that theme song was awesome. And the new one, I remember going to the Royal Rumble this year, and it was just crickets. Godfather, I mean, joining the RTC was just bad for the Godfather, but he had the music. It was the whole gimmick. Losing the gimmick and the music really hurt him a lot. Like, there's probably better examples out there. Val Venus, again, they took away his music and cut his hair and changed his whole presentation. That hurt him. There were some guys that were basically an entrance. And if you change their entrance, that can really hurt them. Psycho Jet Black brought up Baron Corbin. I mean, not a bad pick at all. He had great music, and when they took that away, I think it definitely hurt him. Zelina Vega is a good choice. I'm seeing a lot of people mention Zelina. Rikishi, he kind of had good bad guy music. The whole heel turn in general was bad. See, for some of these guys, there were other factors, not just the music being changed. It was more about changing their character and their whole presentation. But just music alone, it's a little bit tougher. Zelina's up there, though. She's definitely towards the top. All right, we got one here from Jeremy. Jeremy says, hey, Aaron, how would you have booked the Alliance and NWO invasion? And what do you think about Chris Jericho's undisputed title reign in 2002? Well, the invasion, I've talked about this over the years. First of all, I wouldn't have had the WCW guys be booked like losers. That's one thing. Wouldn't have booked DDP to be a stalker when his wife is Kimberly Page. That was stupid. I would have paid the money, bought out the contracts, got in Bill Goldberg, got in Ric Flair, got in Hogan, got in Nash, got in Scott Steiner, got in Sting, pay the money, get those guys, buy out their Time Warner deals, and I would have had WCW win some matches. Like, they needed to be booked not just equal, but above the WWE talent, at least in the beginning. Make them strong, and then eventually WWE could win the war. Like, WWE can win. Vince owns both companies. But you want to make the bad guys strong before the good guys win. And Vince just couldn't let that happen at all. WWE had to dominate the whole thing, other than, Steve Austin. When WCW did win, it was the WWE guy representing WCW. Steve Austin turned on the Alliance, and that was stupid. You needed the WCW guys to be winning, the actual WCW guys, not Steve Austin. So yeah, there were a lot of things, and the NWO just wasn't gonna work out as it was in 2002. And Jericho's title reign, it was fine, but he was booked like a mid-carder that had the titles. That was the problem. And every match he had, he needed all the outside interference to win. He was like a fluke champion. He was like The Miz. One of those guys that they just put the title on him because he's a good promo and entertaining, but they don't really book him at the level of the top guys. So it's hard to really see the guy as credible. If he was booked more like Triple H, what do you know? I think he would have done better. All right, we got one more here, unless we get any more super chats, and then I'll wrap this one up. Calvin said, what's your favorite Vince McMahon and Steve Austin segment? I'm sure I've answered this one on other streams over the years, but to me, it would be the hospital. I always found that to be hilarious. That was one of my favorites. The Zamboni with Austin driving out there was another one. The beer truck. Those would be my top three. And of course, the first stunner in Madison Square Garden was a very significant moment, very memorable to me, and really set the tone for what the future would be. There were a lot of them. Definitely a lot of memorable Stone Cold moments. All right, so on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. We're right about at an hour. The good news is I'll be back again next weekend. I plan on doing this next Saturday night, so make sure you guys tune in for that. And shout out to Walter. We got one more here from Walter, the reliable one. And again, check out Walter's channel, Rage of Wrestling. Can they do the invasion right with TNA right now? Who does TNA have to make an invasion work? I mean, they got the Hardy Boys, but they're WWE guys. Who are the top TNA wrestlers that would be credible even against the NXT guys? I'll wait. Moose? Like, who do you have? Who would you put in there from TNA that could be believable against the NXT stars. I mean, you got Moose, that's about it. And even him, I'm not sure. Like, didn't they already do him versus Obafemi? I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the invasion angles because I feel like they're never executed properly. And I just really wouldn't buy into it. I'm sorry, I wouldn't buy into Mike Santana. So TNA just doesn't have the star power. You know, most of their guys that have the name value are WWE guys, you know, the Hardy Boys or Nick Nemeth, so on and so forth. Joe Hendry. Oh, Joe Hendry, the guy that got beat up by Roman Reigns in 5 seconds at the Royal Rumble. That Joe Hendry, or the guy that got RKO'd by Randy Orton in 2 minutes at WrestleMania. That Joe Hendry ain't going to be Joe Hendry. Moose is really the only guy that I could make an argument for. Definitely not Santana. Not really Tessa. Masha Slamovich. She was at the last NXT show, right? She's all right, but doesn't really stand out. So sorry, TNA fans. I don't think an invasion is going to work anytime soon. You know, they just don't have that star power. And I really do feel like part of their success and buzz right now is because they're getting the WWE rub, and they're basically the fourth brand. Let's face it here. They're like an extension of NXT. So unless they can come up with some different storylines or get a character that's really hot that isn't Joe Hendry, you know, I don't think an invasion storyline is going to work, or I don't think there's going to be something that's going to really draw in new people when the wrestling product is already oversaturated enough as it is. But thank you, Walter. Thank you, JJ. Thank you to everybody else for your super chats and your emails and your comments. Much love and appreciation to everybody out there. I will be back for another Q&A next Saturday at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can start emailing me questions now. NoDQ&AV@gmail.com. Send in your questions. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Spread the word about this video. Share a link on social media. Say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.